Hello, my name's Christian, an animator of Swirly Straw Studios. Animation. What is not to be said about it? Everywhere you look, you feel a sense of admiration of the medium. The genre, like every other, has been impactful towards audiences for over a century. It takes a lot of hard work and time to make it to its final form. To world build, to design characters, write a story, and it also takes a sense of courage and discovery. Over the previous years before my studio became its domain of creation of independent animation, I've always been a fan of many beloved animation studios. Let's talk about Pixar for this one. Pixar is a studio that takes the risk to discover an inner sense of story, world building, animation, and most importantly, emotion. And it all starts with the studio getting experimental. From its first film, Toy Story, Pixar was on the brink of fabricating what was to be the first ever CG animated film. They would then evolve to A Bug's Life. The studio then experimented on making a world set in a miniature proportion through the lens of insect characters. We would jump to The Incredibles. The studio took beyond abundance of what would it be like to write a family of superheroes in a world of action, to what would be my personal favorite Pixar film of all time, WALL-E. A world through the photorealistic lens of a robot experiencing human emotion. Years later, we got to 2015. We received what would become one of their most emotional packaged movies, Inside Out. A film that dominated the year of being the best animated feature that tackled a story with literal emotions jumping into your soul, bringing out the emotions you could never hold in as you watch. Enough that made me burst into tears ever, and only ever so far in a movie theater. Now don't get me wrong, Coco, Onward, Soul, Luca, I got very teary-eyed, but it takes more to get my sadness and joy to create a massive emotion explosion in my brain. However, as time went by for Inside Out to achieve its goal of being one of the highest grossing films in the mid-2010s, there was another Pixar film that followed along that same year, and it became another favorite of mine, The Good Dinosaur.
You have got to be frickin' kidding me.
Yes, I know. Why? Why would a human being ever consider this film as something to be admired next to films like Inside Out and WALL-E? I've known for a long time how the film managed to be the most hated, the most bombed of Pixar, the most boring, that there was nothing it has accomplished. Of course, I am the black sheep of Pixar and animation fans, and making this video had me skeptical on how viewers would see my opinion. It's no surprise that I wouldn't have allies to support me. But it's because how a film touches my heart, it makes me appreciate and understand its worth and value than expected. And 10 years later now, it's still a classic to me. Let's get into what The Good Dinosaur was and how it became to be. What if the asteroid didn't hit the dinosaurs? The film was a bumpy ride during production. It tackled quite a lot of experimentation and could have been something completely different from the get-go. Its original director, Bob Peterson, said, and I quote, "It's time to do a movie where you get to know the dinosaur. What it's like to be a dinosaur, and to be with the dinosaur." Now, of course, this isn't the first ever dinosaur movie, especially one that hasn't bombed in 1993. You could call it no coincidence that Disney, as well, in the year 2000, made a dinosaur movie that also bombed and got negative reviews. But I'm not discussing Dinosaur. I'm discussing The Good Dinosaur. From early concept art and the synopsis on the film was set to be completely different. It would introduce the character Arlo, who seemed to be much older than his final form. And just like the final plot, he becomes a farmer, goes on a quest and meets a cave boy, and soon they become friends. And here's where things began to take a detour. Back in August 2013, Disney reported that due to story problems, the director and the producer had to be removed from the film. According to news reports, the studio was looking for a new director that would put the film back on track, while still attempting to release the film in 2014. Ed Catmull, Pixar's president, confirmed to Los Angeles Times saying, and I quote, "All directors get really deep in their film. Sometimes you just need a different perspective to get the idea out. Sometimes directors are so deeply embedded in their ideas, it actually takes someone else to finish it up." Bob Peterson, who still remains at Pixar, moved on to do another project he was developing. On September 18, 2013, it was announced that The Good Dinosaur will be released on November 25th, 2015. A few months later, in October, Peter Sohn was officially announced as the director of The Good Dinosaur. His contribution was scrapping the concept of dinosaur farmers and including the idea of making nature itself the main antagonist, making its first Pixar film to not have a literal villain. However, Peterson warned, the title is deceptively simple. It has more meaning to it than it seems. When I went to go see Inside Out in June 2015, that's when I first saw the teaser trailer. The movie looked like something very ethereal. It shared us no exact plot, but it had incredible visuals and no exact story yet. Trailers and ads came along as the months counted down to November, and even though I wasn't exactly aware of the story, I was touched by the characters. The main protagonist of this film is Arlo. Now before we move on, yes, the dinosaurs are quote-unquote cartoony, which was Bob Peterson's intention. I know it's a throw-off compared to how photorealistic the world is around them, which we'll get to soon. But it's quite interesting how different structures of animation interact. Just because certain characters are designed non-realistic, they're still expressive and modeled accurately based on their anatomy. We also see Henry, his father. He plays a loving, supportive parent role in this film. What he says is an accurate point to not let your fear weaken you. Now in this personal case, around this time this film was released, I had a massive fear of storms. The intensity, the unexpected forces that lie within the sky that could impact your nerves. It was presented well thanks to the animation that really turned clouds into characters and its mind-blowing effects. I really felt scared and anxious seeing those scenes in the movie, reminding me how I deal with storms in the real world. Not to mention the river with those epic rapids. Pixar went all out with those effects. Now here's where I believe audiences call the boring part. We are mostly on this journey with Arlo alone. Nothing but the sounds of Michael and Jeff Dana's soundtrack, which is soothing. Give it a listen. We watch this character go on a journey, struggling to find his way, find food, getting his leg stuck, which hangs on for a good amount of time as if I were a kid in the same situation. I'd react hopelessly like Arlo here. However, he's not alone. He comes across Spot. We get to see our first human character in this movie. We notice that he helps him throughout his predicament. Yes, it's all performed as expected from a lonely character who keeps to himself as he survives, interacting with the one primal companion he has, but we get to see how their relationship grows. Spot being loyal to Arlo like a dog, which makes this movie a whole boy and dog story. The journey may sound small, but it's grand with a set of an amazing mountain range in the west, in which the team did amazing landscape research and did so much simulation to make the water feel natural and epic along with the weather, using great cloud effects. The team then got to build this entire landscape environment we never seen in previous Pixar films. World building is a huge challenge for films, to put a lot of depth into how it stands and how the characters coexist with it. We could definitely visit places like this in California or Wyoming. This to me is seeing the world as a character, nature per se, changing itself around our protagonist who is also changing his perspective on it. Not to say I wouldn't go to the land of the dead from Coco or the great before from Soul, but come on, it's like looking out a window. The trees, the water, the wildlife, the clouds, the weather. I felt like I was hiking along with Arlo. Also, this is the first ever Pixar movie to have a high on drug sequence. Yes, it may seem unnecessary, but Pixar wanted to try what being high might look like, even if it is with fruit. It gets trippy as it could, but come on, what do you expect for there to be marshmallow robots and flying donuts in the skies around them? Now let's talk the emotion on this one. It really tackles hard, as little to no dialogue between these characters. They still share and express their feelings of joy, but also the experience they feel with sadness as they understand each other's loss and how they understand family. Now, even though we haven't seen other dinosaurs in this video yet, that doesn't mean they're not in this movie. I mean, it's amazing how far we get to see more species. I mean, in their world, it's been 1 billion years since what were expected to be the Jurassic period. I enjoy how this is the first Pixar film set as a Western. The dinosaurs developed their behavior to graze and become farmers like the herbivores. And as for the carnivores, they became ranchers. Yet we see the T-Rexes such as Butch, who has a very distinct design. and his two kids who become helpful ranchers to Arlo and Spot. I'd say the T-Rex's and Arlo's dynamic feels very comforting, as even though the T-Rex has always been represented as the most vicious creature, it puts a new perspective on how they live and survive in this movie. What's also cool is how we see the velociraptors accurately in this. They have feathers. We don't see that in most raptor representation. We even get to meet our main antagonist, Thunderclap. He's a pteranodon who leads scavengers that eat surviving creatures affected by the storms they follow. I was never comfortable with this guy who enjoyed following what Arlo feared. Now let's talk about the film's message about fear. Fear in my perspective was never represented enough around the time before I saw this movie. I was always taught in movies or just in life in general to just be brave or just be confident, but that didn't seem enough for me to understand why my fears existed. I too get scared. A lot of us get scared. We don't know how we'll survive certain events or obstacles that would make us worry about our lives that keep us from becoming our best selves. It takes the first step to grow out of it, and it can be done no matter how small your confidence is, or with the support from friends and loved ones. Arlo is a child who lost his father due to his fears. He is alone, having difficulty adapting into the environment around him. The moments from this movie I remember most are from almost everything. The scenes give such an impact, with or without dialogue. Scenes that go on minutes followed by a Michael and Jeff score are soothing. When the film ended, I wasn't prepared for it to. I wanted more. And no, I didn't want anything fixed than we already had. I was too attached to it. We took a journey to a world that was a character that created environments that were unpredictable to the actual animated character who discovers a friendship and facing his fears on his own. The character Arlo grew like a lot of Pixar characters. A simple boy and dog story is what was needed. Originally, when I was writing this video, I was going to explain the plot of the whole movie and why it's so good, but why should I? Why should I just recap the movie to you? We don't watch these videos about our favorite films to just reread the plot. I made this video to further explain why this film should be watched for the experience, and not by word of mouth by its cons. Here's where it gets personal. Watching this movie made me feel so relaxed. It was like watching a nature documentary with characters. I was turning 18 at the time the movie came out. It almost felt like my childlike innocence held onto this movie as I became an adult. Now don't get me wrong, Coco, Luca, Turning Red, those movies bring my childlike innocence back as they were also movies starring kids. But The Good Dinosaur was the first to have a kid protagonist. Every scene made me feel comfortable, scared, sad, and hopeful. I revisit this movie almost every fall of the year, giving me a refreshing sense of gratitude on how epic life outside can be challenging but also wonderful. The film may not have been a grand musical adventure about death, a journey of underwater environments and creatures, or a comedic fast-paced college story of monsters. It was grand in its scale of animation potential, bringing dinosaurs to life with their capability to live free in the environment and settle down with a story about friendship and fear. The film, in my perspective, accomplished my view of facing challenges we can't get rid of, which is fear itself, only to get through it. We've been introduced to Pixar's first dinosaurs. Rex is a toy. We see a new kind of way on how they live and behave. Peter Sohn finished this film off to its potential. In an interview, he mentioned the film wasn't his favorite, but is proud that he and his team went through to complete the film together. This is because he later got to direct his own feature film, Elemental. The Good Dinosaur was his big step into directing a feature film firsthand. This did lead to amounts of awards, such as being nominated at the Golden Globes, and having 10 nominations at the Annies, including winning for Best Visual Effects in a Feature Film. Obviously. I'm not a critic. This is my first time reviewing a film I believe didn't deserve the hate at its prime. Films like this remind me to enjoy the beauty and entertainment given to us. It's not Pixar's best movie, but it doesn't have to be treated like its worst. Critics tear this movie down, because animation is sometimes taken for granted most of the time. Recently, another one of Pixar's films that had director changes, and also bombed, was Elio. I remember when the film came out, Audiences were actually praising the movie. That was until the internet decided to turn their minds around and give them reasons to not see the movie. I made this movie to celebrate 10 years of The Good Dinosaur, being a great film. It touched my soul, and it still does to this day, reminding me to not listen to the haters and have a positive perspective. I'm not saying you have to watch the movie to see what I see. All I'm saying is to give it another chance. While you do that, I'll be watching the film again and again and again.